Good morning. We're going to get started this morning. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to our webinar on Better Training Equals Better Work, Farm Employee Training Made Simple. My name is Katie Hunter. I work for agcareers.com, and I'll be the moderator today for the event. Today, our goal is to give you insight from our panelists about their experience in hiring and onboarding their new team members. This webinar was made possible through our Feed Your Future initiative in partnership with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and funding through the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, the Government of Ontario, and the Government of Canada. Our Feeding Your Future initiative works to connect agri-food employers with current job seekers to help fill the labor shortage within Ontario, agriculture and food industries, now and into the future. We want to make it easier for employers to find, train, and retain workers that they need, and to help employ Ontarians with meaningful jobs. OFA has partnered with agcareers.com to help agri-food businesses in Ontario to set up an online account, post job openings, and manage applications for free. You simply provide us with your company's information, so your farm information, and the types of roles that you're hiring for, and we can create your account, help write your job description if you don't already have one, and send the applications directly to you by email. We'll even feature your jobs in our Feeding Your Future booth at our virtual career fairs that we're hosting for Ontario to get them more exposure. Also, just before we get started, there's a message from our partner OFA today before we get started. So as part of the OFA Feeding Your Future Labor Project, the Ontario Ag Worker Training Certificate was launched in early 2021. It's an introductory training opportunity for workers that are new to agriculture. This course has been relaunched with updated information such as road safety, biosecurity, and crop input safety. There are 2 brand new modules, including mental wellness in agriculture and hand tool operation and safety. You can take advantage of the $99 discount that's available until March 31st compared to the course's full value of $299. If you are interested in enrolling employees or learning more, you can check out the feedingyourfuture.ca agri-training link and check out their course syllabus. A few items to mention before we get started today. This will be a panel style webinar, and you'll have the opportunity to hear from each of our panelists. At the end of today's webinar, there will be time for additional questions if you have any. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to, you can start sharing them as soon as you have them in our chat section. And once we're done the questions, we will get to those questions in the chat bar. If you do have any other questions, just put them in there. Please keep yourself muted, and we will be recording today's webinar. So if for some reason you have to step away, you can catch the replay afterwards. Today, our panelists that are joining us, we're so happy to have you here to talk about your experience in onboarding and hiring employees in agriculture. We know that it can be challenging to find the right fit for our operations, so we appreciate you sharing your guidance and your insight with our attendees today. So we have Jenny Butcher here from Tanbark Jersey's Little Brown Cow Dairy, Emily Denhan from Handview Holsteins and Sheldon Creek Dairy, and Greg Haskett from Haskett Farms and Utterly Ridiculous. So thank you so much for your participation today. We do really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience with our attendees today. So I would like to get started. Jenny, could you tell us a little bit about your background and your farm business? Kind of just give us a snapshot of your story. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, you're muted, Jenny.
Yeah, so we have a dairy farm where we milk 65 cows. We also raise all of the followers, so including the males, because we sell all the beef in the store. And then we have a cheese plant and a dairy plant where we process 100% of that milk and sell it exclusively through our on-farm store. So there's 3 components to our business: the farm, the cheese plant, and the store, which creates a interesting array of employees that we get to work with and get to deal with.
Next, Jenny, that's great information about your store and about your farm operation. So thank you for sharing. Next, I'd like Emily to share about your operation and about your plant as well.
Hi, yes. So I'm Emily Denhan. I'm from a dairy farm. We have a dairy farm just outside of Alliston, Ontario. So we milk about 70 cows in a robotic barn. We run 500 acres of cash crop, well, cropping for feed and for cash crop. And then we also have a small beef herd as well, similar to Jenny. Also similar to Jenny, we have a on-farm processing facility. And so my sister and I, we are part of the succession plan that we're going through with my parents. So my sister kind of runs the processing facility and works with all the employees over there. And then I work on the farm side and work with our employees here. So yeah, I'm happy to share with you guys what we do and how we hire. I'm more on the farm side, so I'll do my best to answer any questions as far as the processing and the marketing and all that kind of stuff goes. But yeah, looking forward to conversing.
Great, thank you. We're looking forward to hearing your thoughts today. Greg, would you like to share about your farm operation as well? We're looking forward to hearing from you. Oh, you're muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, so yeah, so I operate a goat herd. We have a goat dairy, about 1,200 goats. We also have in 2019, we started the ice cream business. So we make a gourmet ice cream with goat's milk. And then in 2021, we started an agritourism business here on farm. So that's our business in a nutshell, 3 components.
Awesome, that's very exciting. So I'm also curious about your operations. I know each of you on our panel today have your farm operation, and then you have other elements going on as well. So I'm curious about how many employees that you might have, and I know it kind of ebbs and flows and depends on the time and how long we're lucky enough to keep certain employees on our staff. So certain times you might find you're hiring more than others. But typically, how often are you looking for new employees, and how many do you have on a regular basis? If there is that, maybe there might be certain seasons that you might have more. Greg, would you like to start on that front?
Sure. We have 12 or 13 employees at any one time. We have 5 plus 2 part-time at the dairy, and then we have the rest are at the agritourism or the ice cream business. We are hiring seasonally, like every year for sure. On the farm side, most of 5 out of 7 of the employees are foreign workers, and so they are with me for 2-3 years at a time. And so, but we try to rotate it so that not everybody leaves all at once, obviously. And so it's just an annual thing where we're hiring and training all the time.
It's tricky to be hiring and training all the time, but smart plan to be not having everybody going all at once. If you have, foreign workers that are able to stay with you for a couple of years, it would be a really big challenge if you had a whole new group of people coming in at year 3 and had to start at scratch. It's nice you've got that rotation going. How long have you been having foreign workers working on your operation?
We've had foreign workers now for 3 years. And the real big challenge is the language barrier. So they come in without any experience. We train them completely green. They are all from India, and quite frankly, my Punjabi sucks. And so training people in that language has been tricky, but when I can rotate through the different employees, I have experienced people who will train. And so we get through the language barrier. It's tricky, but we manage.
Awesome. What a learning curve. Jenny, would you like to share about your experience with hiring, how many employees you would have, and how often you're looking at hiring? I know that's, again, probably a rotation and just depends on the certain scenarios.
Yeah, I guess we're somewhat similar. We have 10 employees. We probably have the work of 15 employees, but keep 10. Everyone that works for us is highly committed, more than full-time, 50 plus hours a week kind of people. And we greatly prefer that. We really, for our situation, because we're two little people with a lot of responsibilities on our shoulders. We prefer people that are committed. We don't want to jostle around schedules and wonder, who is scheduled for Tuesday night or Wednesday night. Everybody works really hard that works with us. I follow the advice from a book that's called Good to Great, one of the best business books I've ever read. And it's if you have the work for 10 employees, do it with 5 and pay them for 8. And that's sort of what we do. So 10 full-time employees, and I don't suppose there would ever be a time that we don't have our ear to the ground thinking about who we can add to our team that will improve our team.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear more about how you manage to engage those employees and motivate them to give so much to your team. So I'm excited to dive into that a little bit more as we go on. Emily, I'd love to hear about your hiring, how many employees you have, and that process at your place.
Yeah, so on the farm side, currently we have two full-time hired help, and it kind of changes. We kind of, the way we hire is depending on what our needs are. Sometimes we'll hire 2 people for that position. It really depends on what's out there and what we can find during the application process. So currently we actually have a foreign worker as well. She's actually from South Africa, so she speaks English, and she had experience on the farm. She was already in Canada, in Ontario, when we found her. And so that's been a great I guess program for us this time, but this was our first time doing it. So it was a nice easy first time. So right now we have 2 full-time help at the farm. We have somebody who works with the cows, which is our foreign worker from South Africa. She does mostly the cows and the barn chores and stuff like that. And then we have another hired hand full-time who does more of the tractor work. And so they're very different job descriptions, and we like to keep that separate so that whenever we're hiring for one position, we know that the barn is covered, or we know that the field work is covered in the summertime. The odd time we'll hire somebody in the summertime through Canada Summer Jobs. We probably won't this summer because we have the 2 employees that we have here are very much like Jenny's. They're very committed, and we know that we'll be able to get through the season with the 2 that we have. So we're really happy with that. But depending on who we have on board, sometimes we will hire extra help in the summertime, especially if they want more time off. So we kind of work with who we've got on board. As far as the processing facility, Sheldon Creek Dairy, we have about 25 employees there, and they range, there's 25 different job descriptions. So we maybe have a handful of part-time, maybe 5 part-time, and that's more for in the store or for packing orders, because we do online orders, and we do deliveries and stuff like that. So we have employees for that. And I would say those job descriptions are constantly being it's kind of like a living document. So because we are growing as business, the job descriptions, and even with the people that are still here, those job descriptions are constantly changing. And I think we'll get into this a little later, but I think that that's a real benefit for the employee because they feel like they're part of a growing team and they feel like they have that responsibility. So as far as our job description goes over there, we've got lots of them, and they're ever changing depending on what our needs are. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing that insight, Emily. I think many of our viewers today are probably wondering, how do you find these employees? I think it is a challenge that we all are facing in the agriculture and agri-food industry, finding the right fit for those jobs. How do you do it? So I know you've spoken about different methods a little bit already, but I'm curious how each of you are finding employees when it's time to hire, and whether you have any tips and tricks that you're willing to share. And At least I know Jenny has actually participated in our concierge service with the job postings as well. So perhaps that's been a helpful piece. And I know I spoke to that at the beginning of our presentation as well, but that's another resource available to farmers that are looking to hire people for their operations. Jenny, would you like to start with answering that question?
Yep. So we did take advantage of that service, Katie, and it was one of those situations where you know, sometimes it only takes one candidate. So we used the service, put a job ad out there. We got one singular candidate, and you know, it was a very successful candidate, and it's worked really well. So really happy that that we were able to do that. Not quite sure what we would have done without that situation. So it worked great, and we're thankful for it. The other thing I wanted to say is that we do not currently have a foreign worker, but as far as finding help, I think that in 2022, if you have any employees on a farm whatsoever, you should always have an LMIA open. You're absolutely crazy not to, because you don't have to use it. But you know, for the couple $1,000s that it costs, that's I would consider that business insurance, and more important insurance than, say, like fire on your barn, because we can't function without employees, and I think that the labor market is that dire right now that you should always have an LMIA open. I think the other thing that we've been able to use for farm employees in particular, because they're very, very different than our store or our cheese plant, but farm employees, you know, use your what you have to your advantage. And most farms have housing, and that's the one thing that we can put in our back pocket and call it a win, is that there is a serious housing crisis, especially in fairly populated centers like we're in Brantford here. It's a real crisis, and people can't find houses. If they do find houses, they can't afford them, et cetera, et cetera. And most farms have them. So that's been by far our biggest asset in the past couple of years, is being able to say, hey, mom of 4 kids, here's a house. It's in the country. It's in a good area. It's not in a you know, an area in town where they've got drugs and or, you know, a poor school system or whatever. The school system in our area, the actual school that kids would go to from the house that we were able to offer, is akin to a private school. It's all rural, and you know, like it or not, it's high income kind of bedroom community school. So we can offer that, and it's hard to find good employees. So you've got to use what the feather in your cap that you have. And the other thing that probably I'll say several times is, by far the best way to recruit new employees is to do a great job of the employees you have. If people love, you know, working for you, you will get their husband or their wife or their best friend, or simply just connections. So you know, it's taken us a while to develop that reputation in the community, but once we've got it, I think that's by far the best thing that we can do, is do a good job of the team we have.
Absolutely. Treating those employees like family and treating them well goes a long way, and certainly speaks volumes to kind of spread the good word about what you're doing. That's great advice. Greg, I'd love to hear about your tips and tricks on finding employees, and your advice if you've got some, or maybe you're facing those challenges too and might all learn from each other today.
So we have definitely experienced those challenges, and that's why we have the foreign workers. The program that we're in, we know that they're committed to us, not, I mean, they're not held hostage by any stretch, but they're here to become citizens of Canada. And so their families are here, and we try to engage with their families, and we treat them really well. They're reliable help. We really struggled with recruiting farm workers. Nobody comes out of high school, it seems, and wants to have goat farmer as a final destination on their career path. So we really try to become a stepping stone in their career. And so with the foreign workers, I mean, we're helping them immigrate to Canada. And then on the store side, we really try to encourage people to join our team, and then also use us as a stepping stone to the next step. And so we help develop people and their skill sets. We don't count on them being lifelong employees anymore. We've tried that. We've been continuously disappointed, and we've come to the realization that we still have a critical role to play in their lives, and they have a role to play in ours. But we become lifelong relationship, family almost, and we build that as best as we can, and give them the tools to use us as a stepping stone to further their career path. So we're just a step in their journey instead of a destination for them.
That's a great shift in mindset to embrace that as kind of your philosophy. So then, I mean, it's heartbreaking when we have great employees leave, but understanding and embracing that to shift that mindset, I'm sure also puts that comfort in them to, I know that I'm going to do this, and maybe I'm going to commit to it for a few years, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing. But I'm sure they're fast to tell their friend or their neighbor or somebody else that's looking at, hey, this would be a great spot to, work, build your resume, get some great skills as part of your life plan. That's a great philosophy. I like that. Emily, could you share about what kind of your situation is on your farm in terms of hiring, and any tips or tricks that you might have?
Yeah, so I would say we're kind of in between where Greg and Jenny are. When we do the interview process, we always ask them, where they are and where they see themselves in 5 years, with if this is a job that they're looking for a lifetime, or if it's just a stepping stone. And of course, we're open to both, but it's to help us so that we know what we're working with. As far as tips and tricks, I think it's really important that you're open. We've had a lot of luck with, open to different backgrounds and different experiences that may relate to the farm that you're working on. So, for example, we've had a lot of luck with retired people actually working for us. So they retire when they're 40, or they retire when they're, young, so to speak, right? And they still want to work. They don't want to be at home all day. Maybe they had their past was in mechanic, or was in, operating large equipment. That totally relates to field work and totally relates to farm work. So we're happy to hire those people and to train them. When we're interviewing and when we're looking for people, the biggest thing we're looking for is for trainability and for their eagerness to learn, right? Are they interested in learning about the farm? And a lot of the times you can get through that in the interview, and you can figure that out. But I think that's kind of where our shift happened, was when we started looking at different past experiences, and they didn't have to have milk cows before. If they've worked with horses, handling livestock is just incredible skill to have, whether it's horses or whether it's sheep or goats. So we look at that. Another trick, I guess, or tip that we've done is we often post multiple jobs. So even if it's for the barn job, we'll post one that's for a highly experienced person, and then we'll post one for somebody who has no experience but is really interested. Because I find it's really hard to get both of those audiences with one job posting. And so, the experienced person will read the job post and they'll be like, oh no, I'm too experienced for this, or the non-experienced will read it and they'll think, I'm not going to waste my time. So we put lots of job postings out there. We may have one job and we'll have 3 postings. And that's just because we want to make sure that we hit the whole market and that we get that out there. I couldn't agree more. Treat your employees well, because they, especially in the ag world, if you like to get people that have experience, it's such a small community. And so when somebody leaves, we've had people leave because they moved or so on. So it's just great to have that reputation going with them. And then if they know somebody in the area, or, we can call them for reference if they bring somebody to us for an applicant. So I couldn't agree with that more.
That's a great tip. I really liked your tip about catering that job posting as well. I hadn't thought about how important that could be, and how the job posting could really turn somebody away if they don't think they fit it. So that is a great tip that others might want to consider as well. Good idea, Emily. So my next question is about having people with experience. So you've all kind of referenced this a little bit already, but when you are looking to hire, are you open to employees that don't have an ag background? So as part of our Feeding Your Future initiative, we've been reaching out to lots of people in industries that maybe don't traditionally think of themselves as agriculture, students that are at a university in a science program or in a marketing or a business program, trying to bring them into the opportunities in agriculture, because we all need people. So I'm curious what your take is on hiring people for your jobs that don't already have exposure to agriculture. Are you willing to bring them into our industry and train them, or maybe it depends on the role that you're hiring for? Jenny, would you like to start with this one?
I guess it's a bit of a jumbled answer to that question. We only have one full-time person on our farm. That person is expected to do a lot. They work from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. Straight, doing all the farm work outside of morning chores. So, and they feed calves simultaneous to milking cows, and they're really quite a high skilled person that's needed. So it's possible to hire someone from outside of an ag background, but it would be very difficult for us to fulfill that specific position. However, if we were hiring someone that didn't have an ag background, because let's face it, they just may not exist outside of an LMIA, then I would definitely look to the hunting community. However we can target that community, we need to figure out how to do that, because we have noticed, and it's totally unintentionally, but I think 80% of our successful employees have probably had a background in hunting. There's just 101 things if someone chooses to do that as a hobby, there's 101 reasons why that makes them highly conducive to farming. So and they not only might they have the skills, but they also might enjoy farming a lot. So interesting observation. I wonder how we can tap into that market. Advertising in hunting magazines, I don't know. Who knows? That's an interesting thing to think about. Emily, would you like to share?
Yeah, for sure. So finding experienced workers. Yeah, we're the same. So we just moved into the robot barn 3 years ago. Prior to that, we were in a tie saw barn, and depending on their experience level, depended on how much work they did at the farm. So, we would hire 2 that didn't have an experience in background or experience in farming for every one that we hired of that had experience, if that makes sense. But we found, in the old barn, it was really, we could work with them because we were always milking with them, right? And so we'd have them come in for a milking, and even if they didn't have experience, you could see how they moved, you could see how they worked around the cows, and that'll tell you more than anything, right? So even if they don't have experience, maybe they just have that instinctual knowing how to work around livestock. As far as the tractor work side, I find having an ag background isn't as important in the tractor work. Having a mechanical background is much more important, or being able, knowing how to work equipment or drive trucks or drive so on and so forth. That's far more important. Once we move to the new barn, having tech background is actually important, right? Like they have to know that I can, if I'm not here, if I'm in the field or if I'm somewhere else, I can call them and I can walk them through a problem on the robot or on the computer. And that's incredibly important now too. So there's different skills that we're looking for that come from different backgrounds, and depending on what we're hiring for, yeah, we'll look for that. And I would agree with Jenny. If I were to see somebody talking about hunting, because they know the science behind the cows, right? Or the science behind the animals a lot of the time, because they're so engraved in how to find them and so on. So yeah, I would agree that's a great thing to look for on a resume.
Great, thank you, Emily. Interesting to hear how things have shifted for you too since moving into the new operation, how what you're looking for in an employee is going to change and alter because you're looking for a different skill set and their roles are going to be different in the new barn as well. Greg, I'd love to hear about you and hiring people that maybe don't have an ag background and how that might look or work on your operation, and if that's something you're open to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have hired outside of agriculture. All of our foreign workers have had different backgrounds. Many of them have had a dairy background before coming here at a different country. But they've also had construction and factory jobs and a landscaping job. And so for us, the most important thing is that they are detail oriented and they're observant and proactive eventually. Once through the training process, I try to really develop that part. We have, because of our size, we have a lot of young animals on site. We're currently in the kidding season, and so I'll have about 2,000 babies in the next 5 months, basically. And so we'll have 600 babies probably on milk replacer at any one time in that period. So animal health is absolutely critical. Once you start getting behind, it becomes you can't get caught up, basically. And so teaching this, or it's really not teaching the skill set. If they're detailed oriented, it's really honing that skill better to be for husbandry. On the business side of things, for the agritourism and the ice cream facility, we hire a lot of services. We don't process any of the ice cream on site, but we do hire marketing people and and tourism people and some junior people. Generally, they're all junior people, but some are just out of high school. And so with those skill sets or those experiences, we try to introduce agriculture to people who have never been exposed to agriculture before in their life. And they have this old McDonald farm mentality and this lifestyle mentality that just is not real anymore. And so we bring their skills, we introduce them to agriculture, we open their eyes to a different way of thinking. And I don't know, it's fun, really.
That's great. On that same train of thought, Greg, I think I'm going to start with you for my next question. So when you are bringing people in or exposing them to agriculture when they don't have that background, do you have an elevator pitch? What would be your kind of elevator pitch for coming to work in agriculture or on a farm for somebody that maybe doesn't have that background, and what you love about it? I'd love to hear that if you've got one.
Well, our like I've already said, we understand that people are going to be with us for a period of time and not necessarily lifelong. And so our our major goal or value my wife and I have is that somebody comes here and they learn and they develop and they evolve, so that when they leave, they are a better person, or not a better person, but they leave better than they came. And that
That's a
can
great
be
philosophy.
any aspect of life.
That's great. Thank you. Emily, I'd love to hear your elevator pitch about agriculture and food, if you've got one, and why you would encourage somebody to consider the industry and the benefits of it.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things that we have is that it's physical work, and it's work that you don't take home with you. So we get a lot of people who, you know, if you think of your office jobs or something like that, you take that work home with you to finish it, right? When you're done at the barn, you're done for the day, and you can leave all that at the barn. So I think that's something that we definitely have. We have flexible hours. And the other thing, so on our farm, we're always trying to grow. We're always trying to be better, more efficient. And so our processes are not that they're always changing, but we're not afraid to change them if there's something that's better. And so in our interview process, you know, we always want to make sure that they're interested in continuous learning. And so we will go to training. We'll send our employees to training seminars, or we'll go with them because if you think, like, we think of our employees as part of our team. And so we want them to be engaged. And the way to get them engaged is that they're responsible and that they're constantly learning, and they're part of this process of growing and becoming better. And so when they have that vested interest, I think that's when it all comes together. So I know that's not really an elevator speech, but I think whenever we talk to people about working here, we always bring up that, you know, we want you to be part of our team, part of our growing and evolving team. And we want your input on what we do every day, because that's what makes the team click, and that's what makes us better than we were yesterday. So I think having that responsibility and having that value at work is really important.
That's great. I'm hearing a theme here of improving those people's lives and making them better. So that's great. Jenny, what would you have to say about what do you love about agriculture and food, working on a farm? What would you say to somebody that's considering a career path in ag?
Had time to think about it. It's still tough. It's a difficult conversation, really. But I always tell people they have the best colleagues that they can imagine, and those colleagues are the cows. And people get a kick out of that, because what people are trying to get away from when they're looking for a career change is so often office politics, workplace drama. There's a lot of drama in factories and stuff like that you hear from people. So this is something that we can offer, is that the cows don't fight back, and they're quite enjoyable to be around. Another thing that's helped us a lot is that, you know, as an example, the person that's working on our farm right now is a mom. And, you know, when she needs to go get her kids from school because, you know, they got in a fight or whatever, it's not a big deal at all, right? The work will wait to an extent, so it's really flexible, and there's no, begging the boss to be able to get away or guilt involved in that kind of stuff, and that's really, really important. The other thing that I think everyone's, well, we're scared to approach, but it's really important. We have to focus on what we can offer, and there's a lot we can offer, let's face it. So what can we offer? Well, a lifestyle for the family. And so at this moment, it's not clean. It is a little bit messy, but we do have an employee that's bringing their kids to work, and that's happened in the past as well. And I know that the tendency is to say absolutely unacceptable, legal, legal nightmare, et cetera, et cetera. Well, guess what? Work's got to get done, and we've got to find a way to make ourselves relevant to people without paying them, $40 an hour, because I don't know about everyone else, but we can't do that. So we've got to find ways that we can attract them to our place. And so we have someone that's bringing their kids, and they value the life lessons that they're able to give their kids. They give them chores, they pay them themselves. We want nothing to do with employing a 12-year-old officially, right? And this person is giving the kids, I don't know, $10 a chore or whatever happens. And it's making their family better. It's making their kid that's on the spectrum feel meaningful and learn skills that she would never get anywhere else, and is being failed by the traditional school system currently. So elevator speech would be that like it or not, we've got to find the things that we can offer and do a great job of that, and that's what we are trying to do.
That's great. That's awesome. So I think that the next thing that I'm curious to dive into a little bit, conscious of time. So if anybody watching today does have any questions, please start putting them in the chat bar so that we can ask some of your questions. I know I could ask this panel questions all day. It's great hearing from you. So my next thing I'd like to hear about a little bit is training. So when you are bringing new employees to your team, often it's one-off, one at a time, depending on needs in a certain area. Maybe you are hiring a group at once if there's a certain season that you're hiring people in. But what's your training and onboarding process for new employees? Are there set things you do every time for every employee? Does it depend on the person? Talk me through that. Greg, could you start this one?
So we're fortunate that we have some experienced, trained people who know the same language. And so we really, we've helped them become leaders on the farm. And so they will do a lot of the training. I will oversee, I spend a lot of time overseeing things. It's the details that we all know makes the difference. And that's where I come in, and I go over herd health, like udder health, and that sort of thing, where sometimes it's open for interpretation on what is dirty, what is not dirty, and and so I'm the guy that comes in and does those details. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say about that.
That's great. That's a really good perspective, and nice to include your team members in that training piece, because they know what was important for them to learn when they onboarded. So that's a good strategy. Jenny, would you like to share your training, what you do when you're bringing on a new team member?
I have next to zero wisdom to share about training and bringing on new team members. I think that it's important for a company of our size to recognize where our strengths are and where they're not. And so our size being 10 employees, we don't have to be as regimented as a large company. We don't have to have people go through modules and sign off on modules. We can understand what they do and don't know, and we need to use that to our advantage and be efficient, because we're not going to be efficient in every area that there is. So I have zero wisdom to share. We bring people on and we try to give them as much knowledge as we can, and if they're great individuals, which we sure hope they are, and most of the time they are, then we give them as much knowledge as we can and get the heck out of their way. I
think there's some pretty great wisdom in that as well, Jenny. Letting them learn as they go. There's something to be said for that, for sure. So that's some great wisdom. Thank you. Emily, what about you? What's your training process? I'm sure it's different on the farm than it is in the dairy, so you can speak to either. And you talked about different job descriptions for everybody, so I'm sure every time it's a bit different.
Yeah, no, it is. We value training hugely here. Like when we bring somebody on, we always plan their first day so that, there's nothing else going on, so that it's focused on making sure that they know and we can explain things to them. Because, we think it's really important that when they come, those first couple of days, that's when we really want to get them engaged and we want them to learn. We also realize it's a lot to take in, depending on their experience and their background, right? So this is speaking on the farm side, but it's a lot to do with the processing side as well. And so, for example, the person that we have that's on farm are in the barn with the cows. She has morning chores that would take from 7 o'clock till 10 o'clock. And so when we bring her on, I spend the first half of the day, because usually it takes till about noon, just because we're training and we want her to explain, we want her or him, whoever the person is, to understand why it's important what they're doing and why it's important that it's done properly. I think that shows them how much value they add to us and how valuable they are to our company, and how much responsibility it is for them to get it to do it properly. So I will spend the first whole week with that person doing chores in the morning, and obviously it'll get the first day, we do it, I do most of it and she watches or he watches. By the second day, it's a little less, and by the final day, I'm really just watching to make sure that everything's going well. We also, I think it's really important to give them flexibility. Everyone works differently. So the way that I do a process may not be the most efficient way for somebody else to do the process. And so we make sure that they know that, the first day, this is how I do it. If you have a better way of doing it, then please, by all means, as long as the end product is what we need it to be, then we're happy with that. And so usually by day 4 or 5, I let them do it by themselves for another week. And usually they work out the kinks and get their own process down. And then I'll come back and I'll watch them do chores again. So just to make sure that, because I can't watch everything that they do, right? So I want to make sure that, they know that this pen gets this much feed, or that, when you press this button on the robot, that's what it happens, right? So there's those little things that they don't always get right away, because it's so much information, that then if you come back after they've done it by themselves and they've figured out their own process, it sticks a lot better. And you can go into those fine details and you can, solidify how important the job is, or how important a little detail is. So that's what our training is for that. And then if any job that they do for the first time, we always do it with them. Even if it's something that you think you can just talk through them on the phone. And not to say that there's not times that we do, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do, but we always try to do it with them for the first time, because it's just, it's so much easier, and it gives them so much more confidence to know that they're doing it right. And it gives me and the other manager more confidence to know that we can let them do it now, because they've seen how we do it. They know the importance of everything that goes on. So, and at the dairy, on the processing side, we have so many SOPs, and because it's much more of a team, like on the processing, when they're processing, there's 10 people in there and everyone is kind of doing their own job. So it's really, I say that there's less flexibility as far as doing it your own way, because somebody may be waiting on you, or you're part of this team, and everyone has to work together for that. So but it's very similar, the whole, we always do it with you the first time, or somebody who's done it always does it with you the first time. That we do that across the board, whether it's here or at the processing facility, or even driving a truck, delivering a route. We always want somebody to be with them the first day, because it just gives you so much more confidence, and we don't want to overwhelm our employees before they really start. So and then we have quite a bit of safety paperwork that we go through. So Iowa, or Ohio State, I think it is, has some really good documents on farm safety. And it's just true or false or multiple choice. And it's not like it's not like you have to study for it. But I think we give them maybe 4 or 5 quizzes, and they could take them home. We pay them for their time, but they can take them home and do them at night or whenever they'd like to. but I think it just solidifies how important safety is, because safety is so important. And even if, they're not really learning anything new, at least they're taking in that, it's important that you don't go near a PTO. Even if you knew what a PTO shaft was before, it's important that we put that into our brains whenever we're going to do tractor work and stuff, right? So it's just a reminder, and safety is it's so huge when you're training and when you're bringing employees on. So yeah, so that's what we do for that. And the dairy is the same. They do lots of safety training as well. So.
That's great. It's great to incorporate the safety piece and have it up front of mind. I know often people kind of shake their head about, I know that's obvious, but it puts our head again and reminds us that, yes, it might be obvious, but sometimes when we cut corners or do something too quick, the fast way or the easy way, sometimes it can not be the best decision. So reminding that of your employees is a really good idea. And I do like your tip as well, Emily, about circling back afterwards. It is overwhelming learning all the new things of a new job, whether it's on a farm or in a processing facility or in an office. So the circle back after they've had time to kind of digest and process is likely a really good way to have some new questions and new conversations about those roles. I do see a question from Courtney in the chat about if there was an individual interested in working on a farm operation or in a career in agriculture that maybe doesn't have that background, what would be their best way to get their foot in the door? So if you were kind of looking at, if somebody approached you that wanted to work on your farm, what would be the best way for them to be considered, even if they didn't really have that ag background? Would it be a certain skill set, motivated? Everybody's looking for people. So maybe if they showed up on your doorstep and seemed keen, you might say, okay, let's try this. But I'm curious what your thoughts are. She said it wasn't for any particular panelist. So whoever would like to jump in and answer, that would be great. Oh, Jenny's up. You got an answer, Jenny?
I mean, exactly what you said. If the desire is there, the job is there 110%, but that's like 90% of our hiring strategy is if they want to work for us, not just want a job, but want to work for us, then we want them to work for us, because we will make something successful happen when both of us have that desire. That's
great. Greg, did you have a thought too?
Yeah, so before we had all foreign workers, and we hired local people more than we do today. We would always do an introductory interview. We would always walk them through the barn, and then we would have them talk one-on-one with experienced employees, current employees, so that they could ask whatever questions to somebody who's actually in the role, and what's life really like, and what does Greg really like to work for? And, ask those awkward questions. And because sometimes it's just not a fit, and they have expectations or preconceived ideas of what a goat farm looks like. And more often than not, that transparency, it helped us. But right now, it's not a need that we have anymore. So
right, and I'm sure that seeing them in their element in the place that they'd be working probably concretes that, rather than just meeting with them in your house or over a Zoom call. You actually get a sense pretty quickly of like, this is what it really is. So probably that longevity piece of somebody not coming into it, not realizing what it is, it probably has some stay power of that person staying with you longer.
The other thing that helps with is giving current employees credibility. I believe in them.
Awesome. So that's a great mindset as an employer, to put that faith in your employees as well. That's a great philosophy. I'm also curious, one other question that I wanted to ask is about occasional help, part-time help. I know some of us Everybody on farms are so busy with so many different tasks and trying to balance and juggle. Do you bring in some occasional or part-time or high school students to help with some tasks? How do you do that? How do you get them to be accountable? How do you find them? Could you each speak to that a little bit about if that helps within your organization? Emily, do you want to speak to that first?
Sure. Yeah. So we currently don't have a part-time, but we have had part-time people before. I find they need to be here. They need to have at least 3 shifts a week in order for it to, really be worth their time and our time, because things are constantly changing, right? You move a pen of heifers and the feed schedule is different. And so they need to be here for 3 shifts a week. But yeah, we're not against having part-time. It's kind of nice, especially in the summertime, because it relieves a little bit of time off of the full-time people, especially when it gets to be the crazy time, right? So yeah, we don't currently, but we're definitely open. That would be a position that if somebody came knocking at our door with no experience, we would definitely be open to giving that position.
That's great. Jenny, what about at your place?
As I said earlier, we try really hard to stay away from part-time employees. The reason for us is that what we get out of this whole gig is farming. We really truly love farming, which means that we are still actively doing work, right? So the size that we're at, we really technically shouldn't be milking cows or actively dealing with customers in the store and that kind of thing, but that's our passion, so therefore we do it. But in order to make that happen, we need to streamline management practices quite handily. So how we do that is we make sure we have competent people in place, no high school students, because if we didn't have competent, long-standing employees, we would be spending our entire life managing and not farming, which would decrease our quality of life and mental health status. So that's why we do what we do.
Good to have your goals at the forefront and remembering why you love to do it. So that helps you get up and out of bed every day because you're doing what you love, and that's important to keep that front of mind, right? Sometimes we can get ahead of ourselves and shift just because it's what we should do. So I'm glad to hear that. Greg, what about you?
We do have some part-time people. We have had issues with them being committed to us, them working weekends, and then there were so many milking shifts that I took over just because somebody didn't show up, and that becomes pretty tiring. But that said, we have tapped into the local high school. We've offered co-op positions to a couple of people in the past. And so that has been interesting. If they're interested in agriculture and if they're interested in working with animals, and we've also partnered, we've had them come back for the summer to work as an employee out of the co-op program also. So it has worked. It is challenging, but I mean, it's investing in the people also, right? It goes back to our stepping stone mentality. So, yeah.
That's great. And it's interesting to hear that you've had them come back. So you're doing something right and they enjoyed it. If they're coming back as a summer full-time employee or part-time employee, that's great news. So I am conscious that you are all very busy people and I don't want to keep you too long. So I think as our final question that I have for you is, overall, if there was one piece of advice that you could offer to other producers that might be looking to hire and onboard, what would that be that you've taken from your experience in hiring and onboarding? If there was one small piece of advice that you could offer, I'd love to hear what that might be. Greg, would you like to start? Or would you like somebody else to start?
I can't. Emily actually touched on this earlier, and I would like to reemphasize the importance of being clear in your instructions and training, and also the expectation of outcome. So yes, their path may be a little bit different from what you've taught them on day one to in a week or two's time. But as long as that outcome is met, then, but it does take clarity. And if you leave things too wishy-washy, then you may not have the outcome that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Emily, would you like to go next? Any advice?
Yeah, I think in a field where we don't have a whole lot of experienced employees that we can, or applicants that we can pull from, I think it's really important that when you're going into that hiring process, you have that open mind and you're flexible to different experiences, but also, you know, whenever we have a position open up, we write down everything that we expect that person to do. And then when somebody comes in who, you know, we want to hire, but maybe can't do all of that, we're open to hiring 2 people for that position. So just being flexible in that way, in that, you know, maybe somebody comes in who's great at one of those jobs or at this list of jobs, maybe, and being open to hiring, you know, a part-time person or somebody else to fill the half of that position. And just flexibility in that, flexibility in the experience, you know, I think because we're in agriculture, we really have to have that flexibility. If you're going to find somebody, of course, foreign workers is great. But if you're trying to look local, I think that's what you got to do. The mindset.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Jenny, do you have an advice or a tip to share as well?
I think kind of what I get when I listen to other people and when I really look at this topic overarchingly, it's that for maybe the first time in my lifetime, maybe the first time in a very, very long time in history, this is, or maybe ever, I'm not sure. We are currently in an employees market, not an employers market. And everything that we can do as employers to understand and accept that is important. So everything we can do to make their lives better, to treat them as human beings, not numbers, to understand their needs, you know, just to be overall fantastic employers is what it's going to take to kind of keep businesses going in 2022. I think it's really easy to forget that it's an employees market because, you know, growing up, you know, you're ingrained in this idea that people are lucky to even have a job, and that's just not the case anymore. We're lucky to have employees, and we're lucky to be able to keep them and keep them satisfied in this wild west world out there. And so everything we can do to improve their life, we can do, we will do, and we'll continue to do.
That's a great mindset to have. And it sounds like you would all be wonderful employers to work for. You really are sounding like in the things you've shared with us today, that you really are putting those employees first and trying to make sure that they're satisfied in their work that they're doing and really bringing them into your team. So with that, thank you for sharing today. I really appreciate the time you took to share with us about your onboarding, about your training, about finding great people in agriculture. So thank you, Greg and Jenny and Emily, for the time you spent with us today. This has been really valuable. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm sure that our attendees today have really enjoyed this webinar as well. And it will be available as a recording afterwards. So we will send it out to everybody that signed up, and people can catch it on our website and on our YouTube channel later as well. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.
Welcome. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you.